Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Today we are looking at some new malicious compliance stories. I hope you enjoy them. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe. The first story is called Sad to Let You Go. I was working for a decent sized family company that had internally promoted a manager from a different department to run a sizable branch for the company. He was warned about a particular employee who was known to cause trouble and was generally very contentious. I will call her Karen. Karen worked in inside sales and was a notorious gossip who loved to spread rumors regardless of their validity. She also made several younger male coworkers uncomfortable with her rather aggressive advances. This was mostly mitigated to how particular clothing fit a guy, but occasionally progressed to outright propositions for their mutual lunch breaks. At best, she was okay at her job, but generally made the workplace less than stellar. Karen also had a reputation for annually seeking raises from the prior manager by resigning. This was usually met with some sort of concession, just to placate her and keep her and her customer base on board. The new manager heard the story, and the passing of the info about Karen just happened to coincide with a drop in sales, to a small degree the company's and to a larger hers. So, to Karen's routine, she walked into the new, inexperienced manager with the news that she simply wasn't going to be able to work there anymore. Unfazed, he immediately reacted with sincere regret that they wouldn't get to work with each other professionally. Karen's confident look immediately shifted to fear. She floundered out a sentence about how she wasn't making what she needed to make, to which the manager totally agreed with her. Again, he reiterated his best wishes in her next opportunity. He then stood and said that he would need something formal written up for HR, but she could do it any time that day. Wasting no time, he immediately sent a glowing note to the staff about losing a true asset to the department and invited everyone to a going-away party in the kitchen that afternoon. At the party, Karen was a woman walking and interacting with guests at her own funeral. I imagine she was wondering how she would go home to her husband and explain that she had quit her job that morning. Fortunately for all, she was far too prideful to admit that it was all a tactic, and that was Karen's last day with the company. Afterward, the branch ran fairly smoothly. It turns out she was indeed mediocre, and her customers were more than happy to have a fresh rep on their account. A few years later, the manager was again promoted, and the pseudo-fired move was renamed to got left to go pursue other opportunities. The next story is called Don't Expect Them to Bend Backward for You. This happened in 2012. I was working construction for a smaller company. I was specifically hired as a compaction technician. Essentially, I would use Troxler compaction gauges to see if the roadway was properly compacted, but that was a limited part of my work. To test compaction, you would use a pin, guide and sledgehammer to punch a hole in the lift, and then use the gauge to measure compaction. I started out with two other techs, which was a survey helper and then the site supervisor's daughter. Of course, she didn't have to do the manual labor part of the job. Since the start of the roadwork season involved lots of demolition work, I was assigned flag duty, essentially 12 hours of holding a slow and stop sign. As the season progressed, I was put on culvert installation, doing both my compaction work and normal labor, essentially two jobs. Of course, this was a huge pain, since I was expected to test compaction, then do normal labor, while also writing detailed reports. The third job site I was placed at was about an hour and 15 minutes from where I lived. You got two options, either live in the cabin the company rented or commute in daily. I chose to live out, but eventually they moved us to some bed portables on site. The portables had no bathrooms, no running water, no power and no real amenities. I ended up staying in them for about 2 days before choosing the commute-in option. Around this time, locals had been hired, part of the contract, and I found out they were getting paid $2.50 more per hour than I was, for half the work. A normal day involved getting to the job at 5:30 am, driving about 1 hour and 15 minutes, on site by 6:45, working until 6 to 7 pm, then 1 hour 15 home. I was miserable, however I showed up at exactly the time I was supposed to. Here is where 3 different forms of malicious compliance started. First, I stopped doing labor while doing compaction reports. I would run tests, then sit down and spend 20 to 30 minutes doing reporting and math before having to run more tests. This angered a number of workers a significant amount, despite this being the core component of my job and being the only person that could run the gauge. The second was showing up at 5:30 am on the dot. I refused to be at the yard earlier, as I was already overworked and not sleeping. The final straw was showing up at 5:30 am, and the crew van, driven by an employee I despised, left, driving past myself and another coworker. I took a sip of my coffee, thought about it, and drove straight to the competitions shop. I sat there, a hard hat, boots, vest, and lunch, ready to go. They opened at 7 am, and I walked in the door saying what happened and that I needed work. I was on a site within 45 minutes, making $2 more per hour. That day, I did not receive an apology, call, text, or anything. No offer of repayment of wages lost or anything. So the next day, I was again with my new crew. My previous supervisor called me up, questioning my absence around 11 am. I explained what had happened and why I wasn't there. He said he understood, but expected me the following day. No apology, just, yeah, that was a bad thing to do, and a bit of anger towards me. I told him to kick rocks, as I was being paid more to do less work. Suffice to say, the old company wasn't very happy with me. The last story is called Like to Waste Time. I used to be a shift manager at a collectibles store, where we sold a lot of used movies, games, figurines and such. The kind of place that old school collectors drool over, so we saw our fair share of enthusiasts coming and going. A lot of them were really nice, passionate people that were just jazzed as hell that they had a local place to look for rarities. Often shady, often not super aware of how much time they were taking from staff by striking up a conversation. But it was both good for business and pretty fun to oblige these people when they came in, so we often did. We had a guy who, for a period of a few months, would come in about once a week to look at the cartridge games. The thing to know about our cartridge games is that they were all on display in large glass cases. If you wanted to sift through them, an employee had to wait with you to prevent theft. Some stuff in those cases was worth hundreds of dollars. Not typically a big problem, but this guy often bought items in bulk and had very particular tastes. I'm not sure if he was a reseller, which we sometimes saw, or an honest-to-godness collector, but he'd only ever buy bags of our cheapest stock. Every week he'd come in and request someone open each case one by one, and he could spend 45 minutes to an hour just browsing through titles. This wouldn't have been the biggest deal, but we typically only had 3 or 4 people working, and this store could get pretty busy on evenings and weekends. Going from 2 cashiers to 1 cashier made a big difference. We would end up getting swallowed by the late day rush without one of our staff members so consistently that we started making a policy just for this guy. We allowed him to just leave his ID at the counter with us as collateral and browse through the games unattended. However, this didn't stop other people from nabbing stuff while he wasn't looking, so it wasn't a sustainable option. Along with spending forever browsing, this guy also took an eternity to check out. He would group the games up by price, type his estimated cost into a calculator and add tax. Then when you ring it up, he'd argue with you about how, no, this isn't what I got, look at this. And he would show you the calculator and explain the math, as if any of this was manually calculated by us, which was basically always wrong. To his credit, sometimes discount had to be manually added to certain items that I know at least one newbie forgot to do. But generally, most of the time, the computer would generate the correct price, he would argue it. I didn't like him coming in and causing backups, especially because he was rude to my staff when he did it. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. On a day when I was shift leader, I saw him enter the store. I pulled aside one of my cashiers and told him to just help the guy as usual, then let me ring him up. My employee got the idea and did as I asked, walking our regular to the cabinets and babysitting him for nearly an hour. Luckily, it was early afternoon and we weren't terribly busy. When the customer finally got to the counter, he had a basket full of items, stacked them up, and I hopped in front of the computer. He started punching all of his values into the calculator, got right to work telling me about how much each thing should be, what the total should come out to. I put on my best customer service smile and said, "Of course, sir. I want to make sure that you are getting everything exactly as calculated. so we can go down the items together and make sure everything rings up correctly. Our computers ran a system that would automatically scan our price and generate a number. But for things like specialty sales and discounts for items that didn't have their own product entry, it was possible for a manager to key in a manual price for any item scanned, even if it was the same price. So that's exactly what I did. For each item, reading the price out slowly to him to make sure he heard it. And he had 118 items. I went down each old cartridge, clearly stating and typing them, 199, 299, 199, and he followed along with me. By the time I got to the end of the list, it must have been 15 to 20 minutes of just scanning items, and I gave him his total. Of course, he countered it. He told me that that's not what he got on his calculator, and showed me the math and explained how everything should have been applied. My mistake, sir. Let's go through it again to make sure we have everything right. I cleared the transaction and started over. One more time, all 118 items, reading each price as slowly and clearly as I could, clanking the number keys loudly as I typed them in. Again, another 15 to 20 minutes of just scanning and typing. The customer was looking slightly agitated, but followed along on his calculator. When I got to the end of the list, the total was exactly the same as before. He shook his head, saying no, that's not right. There's something wrong with the computer. I watched him go through the math again, retyping everything in. Then, after a moment, he paused, surprised. Oh, I added one of these in wrong. Okay, you had the right price. I did my best to keep my face as calm and apologetic as possible. I'm sorry, sir, but after you said the math was wrong, I cleared the transaction again. No worries, we can scan the items back in. So there we went, round 3. 118 items, me typing in each price manually and reading it out loud, nice and slow, so he could be sure I was doing it right. At this point, he had definitely caught on to what I was doing. He quietly said, could we hurry it up a little? And so I started reading and plunking a bit faster. Still took a nice 15 minutes to get through the list again, and lo and behold, same price as before. He paid the total without another word and left with his items. I never saw him back in the store again, at least not while I was working. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.